Normandy, France. June 12, 1944, 05:47 hours. Major Klaus Weber crouches behind his Panzer IV, watching through field glasses as 30 American Sherman tanks roll across the wheat fields below. Dawn mist clings to the hedgerows. The air tastes of cordite and wet earth. Those Shermans move in what looks like complete chaos, scattered, uneven, vulnerable, like sheep wandering into a slaughterhouse. Weber smiles. "Amerikaner Blechdosen," he whispers to his radio operator. "American tin cans." His finger hovers over the radio transmit button, ready to coordinate the ambush that will turn those wheat fields into a graveyard. Then something impossible happens. In 8 seconds flat, those scattered Shermans pivot, regroup, and form a perfect combat wedge. No hand signals visible through Weber's binoculars. No flag commands. No messenger motorcycles racing between the tanks. Just instant, silent coordination. Weber's smile dies. His binoculars tremble slightly in his grip. "My God, how?" The lead Sherman's gun traverses toward his position with mechanical precision. Weber suddenly realizes he's not watching an ambush. He's watching prey that turned into predators in the time it takes to draw a breath. They laughed at the Sherman tank until they realized each one was a command center on tracks. Spring 1944. The German High Command had a name for American Sherman tanks, Ronson lighters, because they lit up so easily when hit by an 88mm shell. The joke circulated through every Wehrmacht mess hall from the Atlantic Wall to the Eastern Front. On paper, the Germans were right. The Sherman's 75mm gun couldn't punch through a Panzer IV's frontal armor at combat range. Its armor barely stopped a Panzerfaust at close quarters. American tank crews knew the odds by heart. 5 Shermans to kill 1 Tiger, sometimes more. The mathematics of metal and explosive force seemed to favor German engineering. But the Wehrmacht missed something that would rewrite armored warfare forever and render their superior guns and thicker armor suddenly, devastatingly obsolete. Inside every single Sherman sat a radio that German engineers couldn't believe existed when they first captured one intact near Anzio in February 1944, the SCR-508, frequency modulation, crystal clear reception, range 5 miles in perfect terrain, 3 miles in combat conditions with interference. Built by Motorola in Chicago using technology most German radio manufacturers wouldn't perfect until the 1950s. Sergeant Tommy Rodriguez, 3rd Armored Division, remembers his first time hearing it crackle to life during training exercises at Fort Knox. It was like having a telephone in your tank. I could whisper to my buddy 2 miles away and hear him clear as if he was sitting next to me. The guys who'd trained on the old radios couldn't believe it. They kept asking us to repeat transmissions that came through perfectly the first time. Compare that to German tank radios. Amplitude modulation technology from the 1930s. Static-filled, prone to interference from engine noise, weather, and enemy jamming. Range, maybe 2 miles under perfect conditions, often dropping to 500 meters in actual combat. In the bocage country of Normandy, where every hedgerow blocked radio signals, German tank commanders often resorted to flag signals and motorcycle messengers. Flag signals. In 1944, while Americans whispered coordinates across miles of battlefield, here's what the numbers looked like. America produced 49,234 Sherman tanks during World War II. Every single one rolled off the production line with that SCR-508 radio installed. Not as an upgrade for elite units, not for officers only. Standard equipment like the main gun or the engine. American factory workers in Detroit and Chicago were installing radios in tanks faster than German engineers could figure out how the American radios worked so well. Germany produced 25 84 Panzer IVs, their workhorse medium tank, throughout the war. Less than 60% had working radios by summer 1944. The rest relied on hand signals, flares, and hope. Even when German radios worked, they shared frequency bands with infantry units, artillery spotters, and headquarters elements. The airwaves buzzed with overlapping voices, creating a soup of static and confusion. American tank formations operated on dedicated frequency bands, each platoon with its own clear channel, like private telephone lines connecting every tank in the formation. "We thought we were fighting tank against tank," Rodriguez recalls. "Individual duels between crews and machines. They didn't realize we were fighting network against individual. It wasn't even close to a fair fight." Rodriguez's tank, nicknamed Fury Road by its crew, participated in the breakout from the Normandy beachhead. On July 25, 1944, his platoon received orders to advance through the village of Saint-Gilles. The briefing came over the radio in perfect clarity. Dog Company, advance by bounds to grid 432891. Watch for anti-tank guns in the church tower. Baker Company will provide overwatch from the ridge. Rodriguez could hear every word, as if the company commander was sitting beside him. Meanwhile, 300 meters away, a German Panzer IV crew struggled to understand garbled orders from their battalion headquarters. The German commander resorted to sending a runner on foot, a process that took 12 minutes, while American tanks maneuvered with split-second timing. Want to know how this invisible advantage crushed the Wehrmacht? Drop network in the comments and hit subscribe. This technology changed everything. June 15, 1944. Villers-Bocage, France. 14:30 hours. The afternoon sun beats down on the Norman countryside. You are Hauptmann Friedrich Krüger, commander of a Panther tank positioned behind a stone wall at the edge of town. Your radio crackles with static and broken voices struggling through the interference. Fine, 30, Ost, enemy, 30, East. The rest dissolves into electronic noise that makes your head ache. You slam the radio handset down in frustration, the metal clanging against the turret wall. Your other Panther, commanded by Lieutenant Hoffman and positioned just 300 meters away behind a barn, might as well be on the moon. You can see his tank, can even make out Hoffman's silhouette in the commander's cupola, but you can't talk to him. Not effectively. Not when it matters. The morning had started with such promise. Intelligence reports indicated a company of American Shermans moving up the Caen Road, easy targets for your Panthers with their superior guns and armor. You'd positioned your tanks in perfect ambush positions, interlocking fields of fire, good concealment, everything by the book. 800 meters to your north, Staff Sergeant Mike O'Sullivan sits in his Sherman M4A3E8. Call sign Dog 2. The summer heat makes the metal interior of his tank feel like an oven, but his radio works perfectly, despite the temperature. His voice cuts through the air with crystalline clarity. Dog 6, this is Dog 2. Panther at grid 247891, moving left to flank. Request permission to engage. Roger, Dog 2. Charlie 1 will provide overwatch. Fire on my mark. The company commander's voice comes through O'Sullivan's headphones as clearly as if they were having a conversation across a kitchen table. O'Sullivan's gunner, Corporal Jenkins from Ohio, peers through his periscope sight. I see him. Big bastard behind that stone wall. Dog 6, Dog 2. Target acquired. Ready? All units, Dog 6, fire. 4 76mm guns speak as one. The coordinated volley comes from angles Krüger never anticipated, fired by tanks that seemed to know exactly where his Panther was hidden, despite the carefully planned concealment. Krüger's Panther shudders under the impact. Armor-piercing rounds crack against the front slope, spider-webbing the steel. One round punches through the driver's vision port, sending white-hot fragments ricocheting around the crew compartment. The driver screams. Krüger tries his radio again, desperate to coordinate with Hoffman's tank, to call for artillery support, to do something other than die alone behind this stone wall. Static. More static. Then a sound like bacon frying in a pan. Then silence. 800 meters away, O'Sullivan's voice remains crystal clear. Target hit. Moving to secondary position. Dog 3, watch that barn. I think there's another one hiding behind it. Roger, Dog 2. I see him. Reversing now. This is what the Wehrmacht never understood. American tanks didn't fight as individual vehicles in isolated duels of honor and superior engineering. They fought as a single organism with 30 eyes, 30 guns, and one shared brain that processed information faster than any individual commander could react. The technical difference was simple but devastating. German AM radios operated like old-fashioned crystal sets from the 1920s, susceptible to interference from engine noise, weather, terrain features, and enemy jamming. Every hedgerow in Normandy created a dead zone. Every running engine added static. Every electrical system in the tank contributed to the noise. American FM radios used frequency modulation, a new technology that cut through interference like a sword through paper. Motorola had perfected the system for civilian police departments in Chicago and Detroit before the war. When the army saw demonstrations of crystal-clear radio communication between patrol cars, they immediately ordered the technology adapted for tanks. The difference in battlefield performance was like comparing telephone calls to smoke signals. In the Normandy bocage, where ancient hedgerows limited visibility to 50 meters or less, German tank crews felt isolated, cut off from their supporting units. Tank commanders made decisions based on what they could see through a narrow periscope, maybe a 30-degree field of view. They fought blind, relying on individual skill and superior armor to survive encounters they often didn't see coming. American crews stayed connected across miles of battlefield, coordinating movements they couldn't even see. A Sherman tank commander didn't just know what was in front of his own tank. He knew what every tank in his platoon could see, what the artillery forward observer on the hill was watching, what the reconnaissance elements reported from 3 miles ahead. He fought with perfect situational awareness, like a chess player who could see the entire board while his opponent played blindfolded. Lieutenant Hans Müller, Panzerforte commander, captured at Saint-Vit in December 1944, later told American interrogators, "We would hear your tanks talking to each other through our radio intercept equipment. Clear voices, calm, like they were having coffee instead of fighting for their lives. Our own commanders screamed through static just to tell us to advance or retreat. It was unnerving." Müller's tank had been knocked out during the opening phase of the Battle of the Bulge. His crew survived, but barely. The engagement lasted 14 minutes, from first contact to his tank burning beside the road. During those 14 minutes, he heard American radio chatter that seemed to come from tanks that could see through hills, around buildings, into the future itself. "Dog 7, this is Dog 3. Kraut tank moving up the ridge, about 800 meters north of your position. He can't see you yet, but he will in about 30 seconds. Roger, Dog 3. Traversing now. Dog 5, can you get a shot at him from your position?" "Negative, Dog 3. Tree line blocks my view, but I can move to that barn and get an angle." "Do it. Dog 7, wait for Dog 5 to get in position. Then we'll bracket him." Perfect coordination between tanks that couldn't see each other, targeting a German panzer whose commander had no idea he was about to be caught in a crossfire. Müller's Panzer IV never had a chance. The morning report from 13th SS Panzer Corps, dated June 16, 1944, includes this understated line: "American coordination exceeds previous estimates. Recommend immediate signals intelligence analysis to determine source of tactical advantage." Too late. The Whisper network was already rewriting the rules of armored warfare, one clear transmission at a time. By the time German intelligence officers figured out what they were facing, American tank formations had developed tactics impossible with traditional radio equipment. Platoons spread across miles of terrain moved like fingers of a single hand. When one tank spotted an enemy, every tank in the formation knew its location within seconds. When one tank took fire, every other tank could coordinate support without confusion or delay. The Americans had turned communication itself into a weapon of war. And in the bocage country of Normandy, that weapon was proving deadlier than any gun. Let's talk specifics. The kind of numbers that made German signal officers lose sleep and wonder if they were fighting human beings or some kind of mechanical collective intelligence. Range, German tank radios maxed out at 2 miles under perfect conditions, flat terrain, good weather, no interference, no engine noise. In actual combat conditions, with Maybach engines running, radio operators wearing headphones inside steel boxes, and the electronic noise generated by ignition systems, effective range dropped to maybe 800 meters, often less. American SCR 508s routinely operated at 5 miles with perfect clarity. The frequency modulation technology eliminated most engine noise and electrical interference. Even in the worst conditions, rain, fog, multiple tanks operating in close proximity, American radio communications remained crisp and understandable at ranges German engineers thought impossible. Frequency clarity. This is where the American advantage became overwhelming. German AM radios shared bandwidth with every other radio in the area. Infantry units, artillery observers, headquarters elements, reconnaissance teams, even Luftwaffe ground controllers, all transmitted on overlapping frequencies. The airwaves became a cacophony of overlapping voices, static and interference. Imagine trying to have a conversation at a crowded party where everyone is shouting over each other. While someone plays a radio at full volume, and every few seconds someone drags their fingernails across a chalkboard. That was German radio communication in 1944. American FM radios had dedicated frequency bands, like having your own private telephone line in the middle of a battlefield. Each tank platoon operated on its own clear channel. No interference from other units. No confusion about which voice belonged to which tank. Crystal clear communication that let tank crews whisper tactical information across miles of combat zone. Coordination time, here's the killer stat. German panzer formations needed an average of 4 to 6 minutes to execute a coordinated maneuver. That meant visual confirmation of orders, flag signals between tanks, or motorcycle messengers racing between vehicles under fire. 4 to 6 minutes, while enemy tanks maneuvered and fired. American Sherman platoons? 30 seconds, sometimes less. The difference wasn't just technological, it was tactical. German tank doctrine, developed in the 1930s and perfected during the Blitzkrieg campaigns, emphasized individual tank commanders making decisions based on what they could see through their own periscopes. Great commanders like Michael Wittmann became legends because they could read a battlefield faster and react more decisively than their opponents. This worked brilliantly when facing enemies with similar communication limitations. When German tanks fought Soviet T-34s, both sides relied on visual signals and individual initiative. The better-trained German commanders usually won because they could process information and make decisions faster than their Soviet counterparts. American doctrine flipped that entire concept upside down. Why rely on one brilliant commander when you could network 30 competent ones? Why make decisions based on what one man could see when you could base decisions on what an entire formation could see? Picture this. Caen sector, July 8, 1944. A British forward observer, positioned in the church tower of a village 3 miles from the main action, spots 12 German tanks moving through an orchard. He radios the coordinates to American artillery. Artillery relays the target information to nearby Sherman platoons. Air support gets notified. Infantry units in the area receive updates on enemy positions. From first sighting to coordinated response, involving tanks, artillery, aircraft, and infantry, 93 seconds. The Shermans didn't even see the German tanks. They didn't need to. Their radios painted a picture more detailed and accurate than any periscope view. Tank commanders maneuvered to firing positions based on coordinates from observers miles away. They engaged targets they never saw with their own eyes, guided by voices that whispered precise instructions through their headphones. The German tanks in the orchard found themselves under coordinated fire from directions they never anticipated, by enemies they never saw, guided by information from observers they never knew existed. It wasn't combat anymore. It was systematic destruction. Technical Sergeant James Washington, 761st Tank Battalion, one of the few African-American tank units to see combat in Europe, described it like this. We weren't just driving tanks. We were driving pieces of a giant machine. When one of us saw something, we all saw it. When one of us moved, we all moved together, like jazz musicians who never missed a beat, even when we couldn't see the conductor. Washington's battalion fought in the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge, operating in conditions that should have favored German defenders. Forests, hills, winter weather that reduced visibility to near zero. But the American radio network turned those disadvantages into tactical opportunities. Snow and fog meant nothing when you could hear exactly where your buddies were, where the enemy was moving, what the artillery could see from their positions on the ridgelines. We fought in weather where you couldn't see 50 feet, but we moved like we had perfect visibility because our radios were our eyes. But the real revolution wasn't technical, it was philosophical. German tank doctrine, brilliant in its original conception, was built around the idea of superior individual performance. Elite commanders, better training, superior equipment, and the will to fight would overcome numerical disadvantages. The Wehrmacht created legends. Wittmann, Karius, Knispel, men who destroyed dozens of enemy tanks through skill, courage, and superior German engineering. American doctrine said forget heroes. Build a system that turns ordinary men into an unstoppable collective. Give every tank commander perfect information and instant communication, and 30 average Americans will defeat any number of German aces. The result? American tank formations started behaving like something the Germans had never encountered. A single distributed intelligence that could see everywhere, react instantly, and coordinate responses faster than human thought. Captain Wilhelm Rösch, a veteran panzer officer who survived the war and was interviewed by American historians in 1951, put it simply, "You weren't fighting tanks anymore. You were fighting a machine that happened to look like individual tanks. A machine that could see around corners, anticipate your moves, and coordinate attacks from multiple directions simultaneously." Our individual tank commanders, no matter how skilled, were playing chess against an opponent who could see the entire board while we could only see a few squares. By August 1944, German tank losses in Normandy were running 3-1 against American forces. Not because German tanks were inferior. In many cases, Panthers and Tigers had better guns and armor than any Sherman variant. Not because German crews lacked skill or courage. The Wehrmacht's tank crews remained among the most professional in the world. Because German tanks were fighting alone while American tanks fought together. Because German commanders made decisions based on limited information, while American commanders had access to perfect situational awareness. Because the Wehrmacht was still fighting World War I-style individual duels, while the Americans had invented networked warfare. The Whisper network was winning the war, one clear transmission at a time. August 2nd, 1944. German Signals Intelligence Section, Army Group B headquarters, housed in a requisitioned chateau outside Caen. The walls are thick stone, cool even in the summer heat. Maps cover every available surface, marked with colored pins showing unit positions, suspected enemy movements, areas of heaviest contact. Oberst Hans Richter sits at a wooden desk, studying transcripts of intercepted American radio transmissions. His aide, a young Hauptmann named Erich Weiss, who studied electrical engineering at the University of Munich before the war, stands at attention beside a captured American radio set, an SCR-508 pulled from a knocked-out Sherman near Villers-Bocage. Mein Kommandant, Weiss ventures, the Americans seem to be using some kind of new tactical coordination system. Our intercept equipment picks up their transmissions clearly, but the tactical implications are unusual. Richter adjusts his reading glasses and reads aloud from the transcripts, his voice carrying the flat tone of a man who has seen too much. Baker 6, this is Able 3. Bandits at 270, range 800. Moving to Overwatch position, he flips to the next page. 3 seconds later in the intercept, Roger, Able 3. Charlie 1 confirms visual. Engaging now. Another page. 2 seconds after that. Good hits, Charlie 1. Bandits withdrawing. Able 3, advance to phase line Delta and hold for further orders. Richter sets the transcript down and looks at his aide. The entire engagement, initial contact, coordination between multiple units, target engagement, battlefield assessment and repositioning for follow-up operations took 90 seconds. The radio chatter was calm, professional, almost bored, like they were conducting a training exercise instead of fighting for their lives. Weiss nods grimly. Sir, our panzer crews report the same phenomenon across all sectors. American tanks seem to know what each other is doing without visual contact. They coordinate maneuvers across terrain features that should prevent communication. They fight like they can see through hills, Richter finishes the thought. He's heard the same reports from every frontline commander. American tanks that moved with impossible coordination. Attacks that seemed to anticipate German defensive moves before German commanders had even issued orders. An enemy that fought like a single organism instead of individual units. Richter stands and walks to the captured radio. It looks unremarkable. Metal box, dials, antenna connections. But this ordinary-looking device has been mentioned in every after-action report from Normandy. American superiority wasn't just about numbers or industrial production. It was about this radio and what it made possible. Herr Weiss, Richter says quietly, what our signals intelligence has discovered should terrify every general in the Wehrmacht more than 1,000 American bombers or 10,000 Sherman tanks. What the German signals